And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to STEM is Everywhere rerun webinar, where we will discuss STEM and real-world problems in your classroom. Today with us, we have Scientix Ambassadors and contributors to the course STEM is Everywhere. We have Nektarios Farassopoulos with us, we have Malden Šljivović with us, and we have Zeynep Kalıncı with us. I hope I'm pronouncing that well. If not, please do forgive me. We will first hear from our speakers today. They will share with you their experiences on the topic of STEM and real life. Then we will move on to your questions. As you could see in our course, we had a Padlet where we collected all of your questions. You were very active. You submitted more than almost 200 questions, and thank you very much for that. Sadly, we won't have time to answer every single question at once, so at the end of the webinar. So I will ask you to if you have additional questions, submit them in the Q&A section, or we can keep on discussion in the course forum or the Facebook group after this event. So to begin with, I will ask Nektarios now to join us and enjoy the event. And thank you again for joining us today.
Jelena, is everything okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nektarios Farassopoulos, and I am a primary school teacher in Syros, Greece. Currently, I work as a head teacher of Anno Syros Primary School. My main idea for STEM lessons is always hands-on. For this MOOC, the MOOC STEM is Everywhere, I had to create an interdisciplinary STEM lesson plan 2 years ago. I was trying to come up with an idea of a real-life problem that kids of different ages could grasp, then they should deal with it successfully. So, after a lot of thinking, I decided to work on a laundry day. I reckoned it is for the students to understand, regardless of their age. Also, they can easily find various solutions and experiment with hands-on activities. It is very important to give students the opportunity to use their senses, touch, smell, and feel the materials, so that they can remember the key ideas of the task they perform without much effort. In other words, through experimental learning, students will broaden their knowledge on science, technology, maths, coding, and even home economics. We can easily combine chemistry with coding. For example, mixing colors can be approached in 2 ways, either with an experiment dividing clothes according to color before the washing, or with a coding activity on Scratch where students have to put the clothes based on their color in the correct baskets. Older students also can produce a Scratch project themselves to create their own game about color separation. We can also perform some hands-on experiments in order to understand what materials we have to use to remove certain stains. It is very easy for the students in all ages to use everyday materials like soap, hydrogen peroxide, vinegar to remove stains common on children's clothes, such as chocolate, ketchup, and the like. There are several other examples of items and activities that are familiar to students and can be useful for interdisciplinary STEM activities, like bicycle. Apart from the actual activity of cycling, that is very enjoyable for all the students, we can use bicycles to perform experiments to help students understand some fundamental physics terms like velocity, inertia, friction, dynamo, and many more. I usually prefer topics relevant to children's life and enjoyable. For example, cooking combines science, chemistry, mathematics, and even construction and engineering. Students can construct their own DIY solar oven and bake a homemade pizza. But for all of us, we had a main different thing last year. In case schools close again or some students cannot attend school on health grounds, we have to be ready for adaptation. One of the most important difficulties we faced during the spring quarantine is the lack of opportunities for cooperation between students. To this end, we can use web tools to encourage communication and cooperation. Experiments with everyday materials could also be included since they are ready available at home and are quite safe even for young children to perform an experiment. Another parameter to consider about our distance lesson plan is to require limited help from adults because parents are sometimes busy. Also, video simulations and online experiment tools could be useful. For young students, talking avatars could have the role of their online teacher and be very familiar for them. During the quarantine, I had to implement an interdisciplinary STEM lesson plan. I modified my learning scenario using mostly Google Forms. Google Forms and other similar tools have a lot of advantages in the current situation. They don't require any account. They have accessibility they are accessible from any device, from a PC, from a smartphone, from a tablet, whatever you have. You can access these forms. They are they are easy to use without help, regardless of previous ICT knowledge or familiarization with their tool. They don't require broadband internet connection. Some students in our country do not have access to internet to their homes, only through their parents' mobiles. So it was very important for us to have a tool that is very easy to use it even with not a Wi-Fi connection. Through the quiz mode, students can get feedback immediately. We also use Padlet to share the results of the experiments, so everybody could see the results of their classmates and can write something good for them, to make a comment. Taking into account the circumstances we faced last years, the result of this implementation was quite good. Also, younger students should be handled very carefully. I am a primary school teacher. Usually have students from 6 to 11 years old in our school, but there are some even younger students in other schools that have more difficulties than the students we have in our school. There are some more obstacles in their distance education compared to older pupils. It is better for them to have limited time in front of a screen of any kind. Also, all the exercises should be age appropriate, and the use of images and small texts is always helpful, as it is very common for students of that age not to be very competent in reading. For these reasons, it is important to use the appropriate tools. To create materials appropriate for the students of the first 3 classes of primary school, and even younger from these classes, I mostly use Learning Apps and H5P WordPress plugin. With both of them, you can create a lot of different exercises and share them with your students using a link or embedded to your site. These exercises are very joyful for the students, are easy to feel, and they are very easy to share it with any device. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nektarios. That was very informative, and I think this answered a lot of questions that we received about how to engage younger students in STEM activities. Just as a note, we will share the recording and the slides most likely tomorrow or in upcoming days, so you will be able to explore these resources in your own time. Now we will move on, and I will also like to welcome Aleksandra Blaževska. She was a bit delayed, but she's here now. That's the most important. So she will now share her experiences with STEM and real life. So
hello everyone. I hope everything is okay. Sorry for my delay. I have some technical problems, but I'm happy I'm here. Well, I'm Aleksandra Blaževska from Republic of North Macedonia. I'm teaching chemistry and science at primary school Jana Moskomenski in Skopje. And today I will show some tips and tricks how to involve a real life problem in your lesson plans. Sometimes as a teacher, we are faced with difficulty to explain to our student how STEM subject is connected with solving real life problems. Often it's difficult to explain in a simple and appropriate way for students to understand. Usually students ask why it is so important to know all that information, why it's so important for their life. Faced with that problem, I have started searching for ways to include real-life problems in my lesson plans in order to engage my students during the lessons. So I found different materials and I will present some of them. I think it's very useful and helpful in order to create good lesson plans with real-life problems. So lesson plans with real-life problems needs to have the following characteristic. The tips 1, they need to be experienced by real people. The tips 2, they have solution for a specific plausible audience. The tips 3, they have specific explicit context. And the final tips 4, if students are using data to solve a problem, they need to use actual data. I'll show some examples now, and I think it will be very, very easy for you when you're creating your lesson plan during this online MOOC. So we'll see 4 examples. Are this real life problem? First of all, students rewrite a Shakespeare play for a teenage audience. Teenagers are real specific audience, and this kind of problem is real life problem. But if students rewrite a Shakespeare play in a new Rimsham, this has no specific audience, so this is not real life problem. Example 2. Students use their town bus map to propose where pedestrian crossings should be added in their town. This has a specific explicit context. Students use actual data to do this. But if students use a bus map in a textbook to propose where pedestrian crossing should be added in a fictional town, this does not involve actual data. Example 3. Students investigate where growing plants in their classroom can improve the air quality. Even though the setting is the classroom, air quality is a real issue. But if students investigate the interaction between green plants and carbon dioxide in the air, there is no explicit context for the students' investigation. And final, example 4, students analyze data about the basketball team and use Microsoft Excel to graph performance patterns for the overall team and individual players. Students are using actual data about the team and performing analysis typically conducted by their coaching staff. But if students identify appropriate situation for using mean, median, and mode by exploring several sample datasets in Microsoft Excel, students are using datasets created by educator. I hope these 4 tricks will help you to create a nice lessons plan, and of course, there are a lot of lessons plans like as idea you can find in the Scientix repository from the first run of the MOOC STEM is everywhere, and I'm sure that you find very, very useful information. I hope this presentation was helpful for you, and in the meantime, wash your hands, keep your distance, and wear your mask. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Aleksandra. That was very informative. I think you have summarized here some really good tips and tricks on how seemingly similar activities can have a different impact and which one actually relate to real life of your students, and which one are maybe distant and not so easy for them to understand and relate to. So just to remind you again, we will make all the slides available in case you need a reminder for these tips and tricks. All right, we will move on now to Mladen. I hope Mladen is ready to present.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is everything okay? Do you see my presentation right now?
We will see. Yes, we see your presentation.
Excellent. Let's move on. Okay. Hello, everyone. As announced, Malden Šljivović. I am from Serbia, and I am a physics teacher. But I'm also a teacher of another completely new subject, which is open for all teachers to have whatever they want in the classroom, and which is something I really like, and it's called Natural Sciences 2. I work in Gimnazija Zaječar. That's a school who prepares you for the university level. And the whole point of today, what I'm going to talk about today is how to make your lesson personal for students. This is something that is very important, because if you make your lesson personal, students will be more active and you will be able to work better with them, and you will be surprised how many things can be accomplished only by doing this. And to start with, I'm going to explain something about the lesson plan I was preparing for this MOOC about music. And this is, it's not really my passion, but sound experiments are really easy to perform in the classroom, and students are teaching better. And you can actually save the time, because instead of all the talking and all the explanation of a teacher, they can easily understand more than one lesson is just one simple experiment. And here is, for example, we have these two graphs right around here. One is the example of the sound spectrum from a whistle. You know, you put your lips together and just blow like Humphrey Bogart. And then, of course, the other is the actual sound spectrum of a human voice. And we can see that there are some difference in the number of peaks, but you actually let that your students, you actually let them analyze. And in order to have something like this, you can only need your cell phone, because there are a lot of applications that can do that. And I'm not even going to say which one I used, because trust me, you can use all of them. It's all matter of your personal choice. And what we did for that MOOC right there, we analyzed the guitar, and we also analyzed how does the length of the wire influence the sound, how does the tuning, that turning the pegs, how does that help with changing the sound. But the thing is that when this whole COVID thing started and we closed the school, I was just about to start with acoustics in my class. And it's not easy to always have a guitar in your house. There are a lot of students who don't have. And this is when I realized you don't actually need a guitar. There are a lot of other things you can do. And one of the best known is that Helmholtz resonator, as the physicists like to call it, or the simple bottle and blowing over it, what the kids would call it. You can actually make pretty music with art. You can just go to YouTube, search for the videos. So in order to do this, I had my students instructed to find a bottle, then add some water in it, and measure the frequency of the sound that is created when they add the bottle. So they needed to focus on how to measure the sound, how to measure the sound frequency, how to do the graph. They need to have some conclusion. And also, some of them use the plastic bottles. In my opinion, glass are the better working one. And this actually is, you can actually find a video of guys who are playing Michael Jackson musics using only the bottles. It's something I highly recommend for you to watch. And this, of course, here is my next thing I'm going to talk about. This is a lesson I am most proud of. Because when we talk about the nuclear scientists, we are teaching it in the 4th year, and we start about the time the kids are thinking all about how they are going to go to the college, and when they decide that the school is over, and they're preparing their entry exams for the college. And you can actually you don't have kids who are motivated in the classroom, because let's face it, you're teaching them something and they're all about some important things like college. They're too worried about to do that. So what did I did? I make this whole thing a personal. When we started the lesson, I give them not an example, I give them a story. And the story is about a multinational company that wants to build a nuclear power plant in our hometown. And we are invited to take a part in a debate. And this is something that you might not, that woke them up, because you might not be a scientist, you might not work in a nuclear plant, but you're going to be a citizen. And when you're a citizen, you're going to have to make some decision on elections and take your stance. So what I did is that when we important like this and when we talk about this, on the first day, we talk about what would be the benefits and what would be the dangers of the situation. And the worst thing that can happen to us, that one day they can make a TV show about us, which is something we wouldn't like. But the good thing is that nuclear power plants can actually reduce the emission of carbon dioxide, and we in Serbia have this problem. And my hometown is especially known because in the winter there are a lot of private houses that using the heat on the coal, and that kind of pollutes the air. So you have the good things, you have the bad things. And what I did is, because we had to do it online completely, I found this incredible Android game, Nuclear Incorporation, and it has all the part of the lessons I would like to talk about. It's almost impossible how good this is. So instead of just talking them, this is happens when you move the nuclear road, this is how you cool, I let them, and then calculated how much time did they blow the nuclear power plant, or how much time did they fade the level. And this is something that they actually were able to send me a report with the full lesson. And another part, which is a little complicated, I'm not sure about your country curriculum, do you have this interference and diffraction thing, but you can actually put your hair or hair one of the students between a laser, and you can actually observe the patterns like in Jung experiments, and you will be able to determine how thick your hair is. So let me just finish it. It's not always easy to do in this kind of situation, but if you ask me, use the FET Colorado. They have most incredible experiments, make problem personal for your students, and everything you can think, how can this be done at home? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mladen. Yeah, again, very useful, very informative. I saw we had some questions in the chat about STEM and arts, or STEAM. So here you have music as an example, how to incorporate. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to make sure we can answer that right now or later on the Q&A?
Yeah, we will expand on it later. I just wanted to
Okay.
kind of summarize what you mentioned. Also, I'm very glad to see that you used materials that can be easily accessible. You mentioned that for most of the activities, you just need your cell phone, and you can use variety of apps. That is important to note, that not everybody has access to all the technologies and app. A quick reminder to our participants, see you're very active in the chat, keep it going, but I would like to remind you that the chat is moderated. We have our lovely Ola moderating the chat, so please send your comments and messages in English so that we can all understand what you're trying to communicate. We will not showcase the messages if they're not in English. Thank you for understanding, and keep up the communication going. All right, so we are moving on to our last presenter for the day, but yeah, we will continue after that with our Q&As. So Zeynep, I hope that you are ready, and I hope that your presentation is ready.
Yes, I am opening it.
Please, Zeynep, you can start.
Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, it will be just a moment. Feel free to start.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I am beginning.
Perfect.
Okay. I am an English teacher. I am Zeynep Kalıncı from Turkey. I work in Ahmet Taner Kışlalı Secondary School. I am an innovative approaches in education teacher trainer in my town, and also a Scientix Ambassador. I will be talking about 2 online learning activities to explore STEM careers. These activities are from a project that I carried out with 2 other Scientix ambassadors from different countries. One was Marina Mola from Greece, and the other Scientix ambassador was Manuela Ortigo from Portugal. And as you know, demand for STEM is expected to grow in the future, and the need for STEM careers will also grow. And for this reason, we organized STEM career webinars in our classrooms. Here in the picture, you see engineers giving presentation to our students, and they are talking about their profession. For example, they in their presentation, they told about an engineer's work and what was the first humans projects, or the equipment they use, or the female engineers. And everybody can organize such a class meeting easily with their classroom. We make this online meeting as a joint class meeting. I mean, 3 classes at the same time, but you can do it yourself for your classroom, arrange a meeting for your students. We made a guideline before the meeting because we wanted to use the time efficiently, and our students prepare their questions beforehand the meeting, and we handed in the questions before the meeting to the engineers. They ask such questions they have in mind about their job or life, such as in which subjects do I have to have good grades to be a scientist, or why did you choose this career, so on. And we made another webinar with a marine scientist. If you have some scientists to help you for your classroom, that's very good. But if you do not have such opportunity, there is a totally free website, as you can see here, www.skypescientist.com. Here you can find a scientist for online meetings for your classroom. And we were matched with the marine scientist Tina Autumn from Norway for our class meeting. Here you see Tina Autumn again giving a presentation to our classroom. She is talking about her experience in Africa, and that she, for the first time, discovered herself new species, and our students were really interested about her experiences. And she also talked about black pearl farming. And she answered all the questions our students had in mind with patience, and we think the meeting was really informative for our students. Here you see the interface of the website, Skype Scientist. It writes, "We are connecting scientists with classrooms across the globe." To arrange a meeting for your classroom, you should fill a group leader form. There are some questions you have to answer. For example, these are just some of the questions. You can select a specific type of scientist, or you can click on any scientist option, or you can make more than one options. We just clicked on marine biologist. You can click on any of it. You can also select a gender, a background, or it's not only restricted with English language. You can select different languages. And you can also search among by name, as you can see here, available scientists at that moment. The other online activity I want to talk about is writing a letter to a scientist. After the webinars, we decided to write a collaborative class letter to a scientist. We wrote to a computer engineer. Our students wrote about their school, and here you see the student drawings. They wanted to draw about the STEM activities they had in their classrooms, and then they asked some questions they had in mind about the computer engineer's job. You can do this online, opening a Google form and sharing the link with your students easily, and send that letter to the scientist. And we received a reply to our letter, and the scientist, the computer engineer, answered all our questions, and the students were able to learn about what it takes to be a scientist. And I want to share a website again. This is www.prescientist.org, but different from SkypeScientist.com, this has application periods. It's about August and June. If you miss that period, you cannot apply. If you match with a scientist for your classroom to be a PAMPO, you are expected to exchange letters throughout the year 6 or 8 times. And with these activities, we wanted to increase students' interest in STEM careers and broaden students' awareness about diversity of STEM careers, like the aims of this program. And by coming to the end, I want to say that today's scientists are in our classrooms, and we can help them meet with real-life models, demonstrate them real-life models, and at an early age, and help them see themselves as a scientist of the future. Thanks for listening to me. I want to stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Zeynep. We apologize. It seems like we experienced some issues with slides to begin with. Hopefully you were able to catch up later. In any case, we will share the slides again in case you missed something that Zeynep mentioned. I would like to thank all of the speakers today for their presentation, but our event is not over. We are moving on now to the question and answer portion of the webinar. We collected some questions from our Padlet. I tried to categorize questions as we won't have time to answer all of them. And I would like to start first with Mladen. Maybe you can share your expertise. So the first question and we received an overwhelming amount of questions asking how to deal with the current restrictions and measures caused due to global pandemic, how to deal with them in your STEM classes, and how to incorporate this real life problem activities with your students when teaching them remotely.
Well, that's a very good question, because you have to be honest to yourself and you have to admit things are not always going to be perfect. It's not easy. It's not like, okay, we can just do everything like that. Sometimes you will manage to do, sometimes you will not. It all depends on creativity. You can also search on the Facebook for the other teachers to see how they dealt with that problem. I'm so lucky to have the simulations from physics that I can use instead of experiment, but other subjects in other parts of STEM are not in that position. So you can actually look around your house and see what would you do with an experiment, then think of how can the kids do it. You can use the application. There are some games you can learn from. There are household materials you can do. And you can always look for the help from the other teachers. And this is what this MOOC is about. Let's see what other teachers can say. Let's search for the Scientix repository to see what ideas they have. And then you can make it. But like I said, do not worry if you do not make every lesson perfect one. It's a part of a real life as well.
Yeah, that's true indeed. I think, as you said, I think this is the best way to actually utilize these real life issues around us. We are dealing with real life problem here with a global pandemic. I think this is also a great opportunity to teach your students, for example, statistics. You know, you can be paying attention on the current situations in different countries. There is also, you can introduce geography there, chemistry, how is it spreading, what type of precautions are good for why wearing masks can reduce the spreading of the virus. So I think students will have genuine interest, as this is becoming our all everyday life. So use that to your advantage to introduce science behind it. Maybe Aleksandra would like to add something. So Aleksandra, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jelena. I agree with Mladen. Now it's time when we need to share our good practice or remote teaching and learning, because this is first time happening in the world. I warmly recommend the Go Lab activities. There are a lot of lesson plans and a lot of online labs and remote labs, and I think that they are very useful in creating lessons plan. So Go Lab activities are on the project Go Lab, and learning scenarios are really nice things that we could include in our lesson plans and to make our lessons more engaged for our students.
Yes, indeed. I would just like to add to that Go Lab has a big repository of already ready to use resources, and apart from that, there is also an authoring platform called Grasp, where you can create your own lesson plans, enroll your students, and then you can see very easily how they are progressing through your course. So I will also highly recommend. And of course, don't forget Scientix. You can find a lot of blog entries on the topic. There were numerous webinars held over the months to help teachers deal with this new situation. So of course, Scientix is always there as a primary resource of all STEM-related education in Europe. So please make sure to utilize it in your classes. All right, so maybe we can move on to the second question. This question also popped up quite often, and I could see it here in the chat as well. It seems like we have a lot of English teachers or a lot of second language teachers in our course. So Zeynep already touched a bit upon some activities. Is there anything else, Zeynep, you would like to add about how to integrate STEM and language teaching?
Yes, STEM doesn't mean something away from language teaching, because scientists need language skills to make hypotheses, to interpret a passage. Maybe we can, there are many options, but maybe we can include in our plans, in our activities, some reading contents. It may be about a STEM, it may be about a real world content, and by that way, including a real world content, students may be more engaged in reading passages, because they will find something from real life. That way they can improve their English. And the content may vary from level of the student. You can change. You can even use fictional ones for younger learners and non-fictional ones for upper grades. And there are many opportunities. Maybe they can search Google and composer writing using their English skills, or you can ask them to recite a poem, for example, using math vocabulary. I mean, we shouldn't think teaching English only as a grammar. They should themselves understand reading a content. They should understand and interpret it and make comment on it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, as you said, a lot of scientific resources are already available in English, so that can be a good way to introduce a lot of labs, for example, available in GoLab. Even though some of them are multilingual, I would say that still most of them are only available in English. So by using these external tools and apps and online labs, this can also help your students practice English and not just learn it through textbooks, but actually get to apply it in everyday life by solving these experiments and problems. I would like to ask maybe Nektarios next, if you can comment a bit more on how to approach younger students. We had some questions about preschool. Sadly, none of us here are preschool teachers, but you as a primary school teachers, you have a lot of experience with younger students. You already mentioned some. Is there anything you would like to add? How do you approach teaching STEM to younger students?
Actually, I think if I have to be honest, it's not very easy to approach very young students, especially in distance learning, because you are not near them, you cannot help them in person, and also they cannot usually read, they cannot understand many things by themselves, so they need the help of an adult. So I think it's very hard to make many different exercises or whatever with them, because they need to have another person with them to help. So I think that the students of this age should be included only in a few exercises, in a few activities, and as far as it is possible to be quite easy for them, mostly based on gamified exercises, gamified activities, and mostly based on images and pictures, because it's very easy for them to understand some things if they see it, if they see them, not by reading them. I think that for the teachers, it's hard because they have to create a lot of materials from scratch, because there are not a lot of STEM material for that age online, but there are a lot of tools or a lot of online tools that can be used in order to create our materials.
Yes, thank you, Nektarios. I think you are right when you mentioned gamification. It is key, and usually using visual aids when working with younger students. That's a really fair point, that younger students are maybe not able to read. So I would like to bring your attention to GoLab again. You will see that in a grasp tool, there is a hypothesis tool. So for your older students, of course, you will ask them to write a hypothesis. You will ask them to write if something, then something else. But for younger students, actually, there are icons, there are visual images that can help younger students but actually illustrate their hypothesis by using these visual images. Maybe this is something that you can consider for your classes in creating some visual images for your younger students instead of asking them to write. All right, then I would like to go briefly over another question. So a lot of you seem to be working with students with special educational needs. Again, none of us here are experts on the topic, but I will share with you here in the chat, I will share with you a link to Teacher Academy's course. Teacher Academy is a kind of sister academy to European Schoolnet Academy, available on School Educational Gateway. I think about a year ago, we had a course there on how to deal with students with special educational needs. That course is no longer active, meaning you can no longer get a certificate or a badge, but all the resources are still there. So for any of you who have any question about how to approach students with special educational needs, I will highly suggest that you go and browse through the course. There are many wonderful tips and tricks in general how to teach, not just how to teach students with special needs, not just STEM related. But if I may also add maybe my opinion on it, I think when it comes to students with special needs, it's of course it's a case-by-case situation, but I think that a lot of them are already used to learning in a sort of experimental way, and they're already used to learning through their own experience. So I think we can also learn by working with students with special education needs, because this is the way they experience life for themselves and the way they learn. So maybe it will be also good to pair your other students with special education needs students and have them learn together and learn from each other. Anybody else wants to add something on this topic, or should we move on to next question? I think maybe we can move on to our next question. Maybe Aleksandra would like to answer this one, or maybe Mladen can answer both Aleksandra and Mladen. Maybe let's start with Mladen. We had a question about collaboration. So how do you find collaborating with your colleagues, either from STEM subject or from non-STEM subject? How do you incorporate that in your classes?
Well, sometimes it's not easy because the curriculums are not evenly matched. Sometimes I have to teach them something before the math teacher does, and that's the problem. The thing is that you can always think of ideas, creativity, something to work on. For example, we created a lesson plan that uses a very popular drama in Serbia called Koštana. It's you will know it, but and we compared that with the Fermi theorem of conductivity in matters. So that's one example, and there are a lot of other ideas. You just need to like spoke with a colleague, see what you have in common, where you can work together, and ideas will just pop. Sometimes they will give you the better idea than you had in the start. But start with the talk.
Okay, Aleksandra, maybe you would like to add something?
Yes, yeah, as Malden says, according to the curriculum, we can't find collaboration in the real time, but we can work on different projects, so we can create our problems and we can connect between ourselves. So there are a lot of ideas. Scientix repositories gives us a lot of ideas that we can implement in our during our work. So I warmly recommend them. I already used one of them. It was investigation of how lights. Oh, sorry. We investigate growing of grass and how lights influence of growing of lights. So we collaborate, a biology teacher, me as a chemist, and ICT teacher, because we also create microbit for putting water on the grass. So that was interesting collaboration between three of us. We create project out of our curriculum, so it's possible. Find idea and collaborate.
Excellent. Yeah, as you mentioned, there are already available resources on Scientix on how to incorporate interdisciplinary lessons. There are some also available in our MOOC, of course. I think this is also a good opportunity to remind you that starting October 26, we will have 2 courses on European Schoolnet Academy on integrated STEM teaching, one course for primary and one for secondary school teachers. So if you're interested in collaboration, I will highly suggest you to enroll in one of those courses, and we are hoping that in those courses you will get together with your colleagues and you will work together to create a learning scenario that will be integrated and that will encompass not just the STEM subject, but it will also go beyond STEM. I see that some of you commented and asked questions about STEAM, so STEM plus arts or STEM plus all other subjects. In this course, we are focusing more only on the STEM subjects, individual and together. But if you are interested in all and arts and other subjects apart from STEM, then definitely enroll in integrated STEM teaching. Enrollment is already open and the course is starting on October 26. We have time for maybe a couple of more questions. So maybe Nektarios, if you wish to share with us, what is your opinion about evaluation in STEM courses? How do you evaluate students when there is not when they work together on projects? How do we go beyond just a summative evaluation?
Well, also for this task, the teacher should work a lot, not just to evaluate the outcome of the students' effort. We should evaluate also all their activities, all the tasks they perform, and also the what they do with each other and how they help each other to understand all the goals we have for this activity. Because sometimes, even if the students fail to make the final product or the final activity, it's very important for them. It's very helpful for them. All the previous tasks, all the previous activities, and maybe they have approached the things they have to learn in a different way. So we evaluate both the final product and also all the road until we find Ithaca, as the poem says.
Yes, indeed. So that's a very fair point there. not just using a summative assessment at the end, but evaluating students as they go through the process and see what they can improve in the meantime. I completely agree with that approach. I would just also like to add that next week, when Module 4 starts, we will discuss rubrics a bit more in detail. So if you are not familiar with rubrics, that can also be a valid method of evaluation, especially for this type of teamwork or STEM projects that your students are doing in your STEM classes. So I will also suggest rubrics. Maybe you do have any other suggestions when it comes to evaluation, if somebody wants to add something? No, Nektarios covered everything, I think. All right, so then let's just go back to Mladen, because I know Mladen is still teaching in a classroom, and this next question is about classroom management. So how do we ensure that the students are working if we are actually performing this type of activities? So it's not always easy to keep your classroom under control if they work in pairs or they're focusing on this project-based tasks. So maybe you can share with us what is your experience on classroom management in this situation.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. It's not easy to control the kids, especially when they're teenagers, and that's something that we used to do it. They're going to do it. So, like somebody mentioned before, gamification is the key, but not only for primers. It's for all the ages. And one thing I like to do is that I show my class a rubric before we enter any kind of project, so they can actually give me idea. But in the rubric, I also very clearly point out that I would like that when they are presenting or that we are giving ideas or something, that they all need to be contributing in some way. And that's one of the way when they actually realize that it's not one person job and the other just to smile behind him. It's very important to work together. And of course, there are numerous activities that demand the job to be shared. For example, if one of the extra results, the other will measure, the other will, but one thing that my class said to me once was that not all the people are good in all the things, and that sometimes you should do what they do the best. So sometimes they share their job amongst them in the way they feel like they're most competent. And it's something like we do in everyday companies. In schools, I teach physics. I do not teach art because I'm much better in one thing than the other. And sometimes sometimes they will do it on their own. Sometimes they're not. If you try to enforce too strict rules, they will find the way to break them. If you do not apply any rules, you will make anarchy. You just need to play them, to show them that it's okay, you have to share the job, someone has to take some responsibilities, and it's going to be okay.
Thank you, Mladen. Well, I think that is all the questions that we have today, all the time that we have for today. Thank you very much again to our speakers. You did a great job presenting and answering all the questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to answer your questions, but please keep on posting them in the course Facebook group or in the course forum. We encourage you to also answer to each other, to help encourage each other, share resources if you have some as well. And lastly, before we leave, I would just like to remind you that the two courses that I mentioned previously, integrated STEM teaching, they're open for enrollment. And I would also like to remind you that the deadline for Scientix Ambassadors has been extended to 14th of October. You have all the information on how to apply in the course So if you wish to become maybe our speaker one day, as our Scientix Ambassadors doing so now, we encourage you to apply. Thank you all once again. Keep up the good work. Keep the community active, and good luck to you all next week. Next week we open on Monday, Module 4. In Module 4 we will have our peer assessment activity, so make sure that you are working hard already on your lesson plans. Make sure that your lesson plans are in English, that's very important, and also make sure that you provide constructive feedback to your colleagues, to your peers, also in English, so that we can all get the most out of this course. Thank you again, and I wish you all a pleasant evening. Bye-bye.